If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
The Panther 48.
The tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to die for.
Tribal
The
self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unheard. Peace and power. Once again, this is your Panther 48. This is your big brother site calling out of Dallas, Texas. I'm 1/3 of the Panther 48, sitting with my other two Panther 48 brothers. Brother Robert Ward Williams calling out of San Diego, California. He is the current chairman of the San Diego chapter of the Black Panther Party, chief and national chief of staff for the People's Black Panther Party. Peace and power, Brother Ward.
All power to people.
We got our unique brother E with us. Brother E, there was a guy, he left a comment when you talked about your mother being white, and he said there is no way in the world I thought I'd ever be hit with Brother E saying that his mother was white. That was one of the comments that were I guess you've been going so hard. He was like, there is no way in the world I would have expected that. He said you caught him completely off guard. But anyway, back to the introduction. We got our esteemed brother E, our Minister of Information Emeritus, and one of the first Minister of Information, one of the first, I believe he was the second or third Minister of Information of the original Dallas chapter of the New Black Panther Party, the original and founding chapter of the New Black Panther Party. Peace and power, brother E.
Greetings. All right. Yeah,
All
my
right.
mama's white. She still is, as far as I know.
All right, y'all, we're finna get into it. If you watched our previous video where we broke down Huey P Newton's the correct handling of a revolution, then today we're going to get into our part two. In the part two, we got like 3 more points from Huey that we missed last week. And then we're going to analyze those points, not only analyze those points, but Brother War is going to then build on a few different takes on revolution or different aspects of revolution, maybe that people that haven't actually thought about, because we got a lot of comments on how revolution should be handled, things that we should and shouldn't talk about in a public setting like this if you consider yourself a revolutionary organization. So we're going to address that, and then we're going to talk about some contemporary points that maybe was left off Huey's list, considering that Huey wrote his a little over 30 years ago. So let's get into it. First, we're gonna do a quick rundown, a recap of what we talked about last week. It would be great if you didn't see that video to go watch that video. But what we did is we built on and we analyzed an old essay that Huey P Newton wrote years ago. Huey P Newton, one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, the Third Development. One of the co-founders with Bobby Seale of the Third Development and the most popular and famous Panther movement. He's also considered to be, if not then one of the authors of Panther Ideology. So we built on it. Like I said last week, 2 books that I know of off the top of my head that you can get this information from if you want to read the essay for yourself is To Die for the People by Huey P Newton and The Black Panther Speaks by Philip S. Forney. Those are 2 books you can see that essay in, The Correct Handling of a Revolution. I'm pretty sure, I think Brother War has a copy of the essay, Correct Handling of a Revolution, and I've left his San Diego Black Panther Party email on many of our videos. I'll leave it in this video, and if you hit Brother War up and ask about it, I'm pretty sure War won't have a problem sending it to you along with other information. Am I correct, War?
That's right. Correct.
All right. Because we had somebody ask, how do you get in contact with the San Diego chapter? And I left them your email. I don't know if they got in contact with you.
I get a lot of people. I get a lot of people that say they got in contact with me different ways. So
yeah,
it's hard to say which one.
All right. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. First, here's the quick overview of the essay. I'm not going to try to go into long, quick detail. We did a whole video on this. So I'm gonna give a quick overview. First, like I said last week, the very first thing that Huey said, number one, Huey said that the black masses are handling the resistance incorrectly. That's how we jumped it out. He said that the masses are handling the resistance incorrectly. And he said, and essentially what he's saying is this, and I'm gonna read a little part of this. He said, he said, when the brothers in East Oakland, having learned their resistance fighting from Watts, amassed the people in the streets, they threw bricks and Molotov cocktails to destroy property and create disruption. They were herded into a small area by the Gestapo police and immediately contained by the brutal violence of the oppressive stormtroops. Although this manner of resistance is sporadic, short-lived, and costly, it has been transmitted across the country to all the ghettos of the Black nation. The identity of the first man that threw the Molotov cocktail is not known by the masses, yet they respect and imitate his actions. In the same way, the actions of the party will be imitated by the people if the people respect their activities. Now, the first point that Huey is saying is that even Huey is writing this over 30 years ago, and he's referencing riots that happened even before his time. And even now today, in the 2020, what was it, 21, 22, 23, we still have mass protests in the streets that sometimes erupt into what they like to call riots. Huey said that's the incorrect handling of the resistance. And he's saying that the people, one of the lessons that we learned from what he's saying, there's a lesson that we learned from it. The lesson that we learned is that the people, they respond emotionally and sporadically, but they get their responses from something that they've seen before, something that they respected, and therefore they imitate. He said by understanding that one particular key, then it gives the party the ammunition to know how to transmit these ideas that we're trying to share with the people. That means that we learn how the people learn. The people observe activity that they respect, and then they initially imitate it. So what he said, his basic statement was that he say, in the same way, the actions of the party will be imitated by the people if the people respect the party's activities. So that's the first principle, that the people are handling the revolution incorrectly, and that the way for them to learn how to properly handle the revolution is through the vanguard party, teaching the people the correct way. Second principle, the primary job of the party is to provide leadership for the people. That's the primary job of the party. Huey said, and I ain't gonna read the long passages, but just to give a point so that the people can understand that Brother Syke is not here making this up, that this is actually what was said. He said the primary job of the party is to provide leadership for the people. It must teach by words and actions the correct strategic methods of prolonged resistance. When the people learn that it is no longer advantageous for them to resist by going into the streets in large numbers, and when they see the advantage in the activities of the guerrilla warfare method, they will quickly follow this example. So, second principle is that the primary job of the party is to provide leadership for the people. Third principle, there are three ways that the people learn. He said that the three ways that the people learn are through reading material, through observation, and through participation. The way Huey breaks this down in this essay, he said that essentially, since the Black community is not a reading community, then the party has to be activists. The People's Revolutionaries has to be essentially activists. And what that's saying is that we have to definitely read, but we have to get out into the streets and perform activities that attract the people's attention. Because once you do that, then the people will observe what you're doing, and then they will eventually participate in it. Once they start to participate in it, then you get them your read material, say, well, this is the standard for you participating in these activities. You must be politically educated. You must have an understanding. You must have a cultural education. You must understand these basic concepts and ideas that will help guide a revolution. So essentially what he's saying is that the party member is not only a fight in the streets, and that's what I think a lot of the brothers and sisters get wrong, because they love to march out into the streets armed and protesting and singing and chanting and screaming, and not realizing that the party vanguard of the revolutionary also has to be the political theoretician, which is another essay that Huey wrote when he said the guerrilla is the perfect man, because he said that the guerrilla is both the political theoretician and the military fighter. And for some reason, it seems like a lot of our brothers and sisters have forgot that you got to be a political theoretician and the military fighter, not just the military fighter and not just the political theoretician. So the third principle is that the people learn in three ways. Fourth, If the party does not make the people aware of the tools and true methods of liberation, then there will be no means by which the people can mobilize. So if the party doesn't, if the revolutionary doesn't do his job, then the people are lost, essentially is what Huey said. 5, there's a relationship that exists between the members of the vanguard and then the vanguard and the people. Huey said, he essentially said, and I'm gonna read this a little bit. He said the relationship between the vanguard party and the masses is a secondary relationship. The relationship among the members of the vanguard party is a primary relationship. If the party machinery is to be effective, it is important that the members of the party group maintain a face-to-face relationship with each other. It is impossible to put together functional party machinery or programs without this direct relationship. To minimize the danger of Uncle Tom informers and opportunists, the members of the vanguard group should be tested revolutionaries. And this is something that without a doubt, all of us speak on, but Brother E stresses it to death, the importance of creating a family-like environment amongst in the organization where it's not just we're going to do business, but we're going to be with family and get business done. So this is essentially the fifth principle that Huey breaks down in the correct handling of a revolution. 6, he said that the masses must be bombarded with the correct methods of struggle. And where is it at? Okay. He say the main purpose of the vanguard group should be to raise the consciousness of the masses through educational programs and other activities. The sleeping masses must be bombarded with the correct approach to struggle, and the party must use all means available to get this information across to the masses, however you see fit. One of the things I never forget that Ward told me years ago, it might have been 1994, 95 sometime, he told me you got to trick the people into their liberation. I call this guerrilla education, using whatever means you can see fit to slide a revolutionary education into the people without them. And it's better if they get the education and don't even know they got it. And that's essentially what Huey is saying, that we have to be creative in the ways that we bombard the masses with the information. 7, recognize and accept the inevitability of being driven underground. Now, we talked about this again last week, so it's good to watch that video because he gave a different perspective of how to look at that. He gave a different perspective, and I'm not going to get into it here. If you want to know what that perspective is, go check that video out. But what Huey said was this. He said that okay, here it is. He said that the vanguard party's activities on the surface will necessarily be short-lived. Thus, the party must make a tremendous impact upon the people before it is driven into secrecy. By that time, the people will know the party exists and will seek further information about its activities when it is driven underground. Many would-be revolutionaries work under the fallacious notion that the vanguard party should be a secret organization with which the power structure knows nothing about, and that the masses know nothing about except for occasional letters that come to their homes by the night. Underground parties cannot distribute leaflets announcing the underground meeting. Such contradictions and inconsistencies are not recognized by these so-called revolutionaries. He said that a true revolutionary must realize that if he is sincere, death is inevitable. So because of the things that you're doing are dangerous, and it's dangerous to the status quo and the power structure, you must accept that they will at some point come after you. If you become too prominent, or if your message starts to get out, you got to accept that. Next, 8 is the falsehood of operating. Oh, I just said that. I went too far. The falsehood of thinking you can operate as a secret society and actually be a revolutionary organization. And if you think about it, it is fallacious. Because 1, he said that the primary job of the party is to provide leadership of the people, and that the primary goal of the party is to educate the people and raise the consciousness. There's no way that you can do that and be a secret society at the exact same time. There's no way to do both. And that's what he means by they operate under a fallacious idea that you can be the party for the people in the vanguard and also be a secret society. Matter of fact, and that's something that we could discuss on another video, but if you understand that and understand those revolutionary principles, like if you read the autobiography of Asada, she talks about it being necessary to have an above ground political organization and an underground military organization that appears to anybody that don't know, even some of the members in the above ground political organization, that they're not connected in any way, form, or fashion. But the above ground political organization would then interpret the actions of the underground military organization without having no real connection to the underground organization, because the underground organization would not be in a position to speak for itself. And that is why back then in those days, they developed the BLA that should have been able to operate in that on that level, but many would-be revolutionaries at that time, I don't think that they understood the political science necessary to understand that these organizations could move together without actually being together. But the next 9 is that if to continue as a revolutionary, you have to accept that death is inevitable. You have to accept that. If you come to this thing and thinking to yourself, I'm in this thing to be famous, they're gonna know my name like Malcolm X, everybody gonna give me a whole bunch of money, I'm gonna go down in the history books. If that's what your goal is, you're probably in the wrong work. You're probably in the wrong work. I can't tell you the last time I got a check for this work. And I've been dealing with Brother E and Brother War since 1990 something. And I ain't never, War, when y'all gonna send me one of my checks? Then I was on injured reserve for a minute, and I never got a injured reserve check, a political prisoner check. I never got anything. But if that's what you think you're in it for, then you're in the wrong line of work. You got to accept that death is inevitable. 10, we have to control your own image. And what Huey talks about on this, let me tell you, let me read it. He said, I'm almost through, y'all, because I think it's 12 of them. So oh, did I get into this last week? This might be where we need to start building on it. But okay, number 10, the point is that you got to be able to control your own image. And he says, millions and millions of oppressed people may not know members of the Vanguard Party personally, but they will learn of his activities and his proper strategy for liberation through the indirect acquaintance provided by the mass media. But it is not enough to rely on the media or the power structure. It is of prime importance that the Vanguard Party develops its own communications organs, such as newspapers, and at the same time provide strategic revolutionary art and the destruction of the oppressor's machinery. Now, and keep in mind, Huey wrote this in the 60s. So now we know that stuff like newspapers are dated. So what we need to do is we need to look at what would that translate to in today's time and modern day time. And I truly believe that if you truly understand that, then you understand that then your message has to be used, had to be given out through social media. That is the main form of media in the present day time. Things like YouTube, podcasts. I'm not into tweets, so I can't tell you anything about that. But whatever's pop, TikTok and whatever's popular, you have to be able to utilize that. And forgive me for saying it this way, you have to co-opt it and utilize it for your revolutionary means, because that's what a guerrilla does. The 11, we talked about this, and this will be one of those ones that a lot of people be afraid to say, but he said in the final analysis, the Vanguard Party has to understand that it will get most of its supplies and its resources from the enemy structure, so that the Vanguard Party doesn't waste a whole lot of time trying to figure out a way to fully stock itself like some kind of military. No, the Vanguard Party doesn't do that. The enemy structure does that, and the Vanguard Party utilizes those enemy structures. You know, one of the things that I think that we fail to realize about what a guerrilla is, when we hear that word, you automatically think, it was Stokely Carmichael that I read. I can't remember which book it was. He said this, so I'm gonna get a credit, and so it won't sound like I'm plagiarizing. But Stokely once said, he said that when you heard us say gorilla, you thought we said gorilla. When you heard us say gorilla, you thought we were talking about something big and strong and loud. He said, but we said gorilla. And guerrilla is a Spanish word that literally means small army. So it's the opposite of what you think it is. The gorilla is not big, the gorilla is small. The gorilla is not loud, the gorilla is quiet. The gorilla hides. The gorilla, when you seek out the gorilla, you cannot find him. When you don't want to deal with the gorilla, that's where you have to deal with the gorilla. He said that the gorilla has to be a tick on the side, be like a tick on the side of a dog. He's saying the enemy has to suffer the dog's agony. He said that's the way the guerrilla has to operate. And as I said before, Huey said that the guerrilla is the perfect man, because the guerrilla is both the political theoretician and the military fighter. The guerrilla is both the mind and the body. He's the thinker and the warrior. So the guerrilla has to be both, because the guerrilla can be separated from his team, because keep in mind, his team is small as it is. So the guerrilla may be separated from that team and then have to operate and move alone. So in order to do that, the guerrilla has to be the military soldier and the general. The guerrilla has to be capable of being both. So that's one of the things that you got to understand about a guerrilla soldier. So what Huey is saying, that in the final analysis, meaning that at the end, the last chapter of the book, where revolution is supposed to take you to, that you have to understand that you have to operate and move with guerrilla tactics. So these are things that you should know, learn, and be understanding now, right now, at this moment. And then the last but not least, the last principle, he said that the people make revolution. He said, to read directly from Huey, he said, the people make revolution. The oppressors, by their brutal actions, cause resistance by the people. The vanguard party only teaches the correct methods of resistance. So that's the three-part relationship in a revolutionary context. The people make revolution. The oppressor, through his oppressive tactics, create the need for resistance in the people, as Eve like to point out, that resistance is a sporadic and an emotional one. So the oppressor does what he does. He puts the knee on the back of your neck. That's what he does. That's just his nature. But that nature automatically makes the people angry and emotional, and they respond to that. They resist. And then the vanguard party's job is to teach the people the correct methods of resisting, so that when they get angry or get emotional, they will respond in the way that the party has trained them to respond. And those are what Huey called the correct handling of a revolution.
Yeah, let me start by saying this. I think where we kind of get hung up a little bit is that we constantly emphasize revolution from our perspective and from the way we see things going on, which means we're diving into either political revolution or social revolution. But what we have to realize is that there are different types of revolution and revolutionaries. And going into what we talked about earlier in regards to concepts of warfare, if you're not studying yourself and studying in your enemy, then you're not going to be able to identify your enemy. And if we can't identify revolutionary types and revolutionary struggles and see them holistically in terms of all aspects of life, would I say modern life, then we also put ourselves at a disadvantage. So let me just say this. Again, we talk about political revolution, we talk about social revolution, but we also have to talk about economic revolution and technological revolution. When we talk about economic revolution and technological revolution, oftentimes we're talking about areas that we have not necessarily touched because we tend to focus on the social or political aspects of revolution. So the economic and the technological revolutions which are taking place today seem to elude us, and by those eluding us, those tie directly back into the social and political aspects. When we don't have our economics together because we're binded by certain revolutionary tactics and methods that have actually stripped the people of their power, and we don't identify that concept as a revolutionary concept, and therefore it needs to be attacked in such a way, then we also are not identifying the enemy. Same thing with technological. So as an example of economic concepts of revolution, we have to go back to one of the documents that was revealed in the 1970s, which was Silent Wars for Quiet Weapons. And even dating further back than that, what that went into is a revolutionary way the Rothschilds monopolized the banking system, and how that continues to this day to be utilized against the general masses and the people. So from an economic standpoint, it is very important that we see how these systems are put in place. And I would even tie that right back to how I say oftentimes when we talk about strategy and tactics, one of the missing components of that is what I say the conduction or the conduit, which sits between strategy and tactics. Why that's important is because we're not recognizing that for something to be strategically possible, as far as it being deployed, which is how you get into a tactical operation, there has to be a pathway from something to going from a methodology and a framework, framework to a methodology. Case in point, this is how protest has been weaponized against the people to move from the area of being a tactical tool in your toolbox to a strategic way of life. is because the conduction or the conduit in which one thing or one pattern has transpired has gotten lost. And since that has gotten lost, our people are not able to realize that this is the wrong method, or should I say, not a framework, but a method of fighting, but not a framework in which we should operate and basis our revolution from. Again, strategy, conduction, and tactics. If you don't have all three, then you're going to be missing something. And if you're missing something, specifically if you're missing the conduit by which a strategy is able to be deployed properly through tactical means, then you're not going to have the right component, which means the revolutionary, in terms of the way it is trying to educate and teach the masses to raise themselves to a higher level of consciousness, is not transpiring down to the masses because we don't have a proper conduction. Proper conduction goes into the concept of currency, which again goes into how the banking system is utilized in following the same principles of physics when we talk about electrons in electrical flow systems. So that's number one. Number two, within the economic concept of a revolutionary model would be the universal basic income system, which is creeping its way in. And we're not paying attention to that, because what's happening with the universal basic income, it is going to help quell the masses of people from realizing that from an economic standpoint, our hands have continually being binded from being able to flip revolutionary tactics that has been embedded on the masses of people, which is how we get stuck in capitalistic and imperialistic ways of viewing things, and how that system tends to be the one thing and only thing we know. It's like when you ask the average person, would they prefer communism over capitalism? And they say, hell no, I don't like communism. And then you say, well, what don't you like about communism? And then they're going to say, I don't know. But yet they've been sold line, sink, and hooker the concept of imperialism and fascism, the way it is being portrayed, without even realizing what's going on across the world and how the economic revolution has created such a system. So when we don't realize these type of revolutionary concepts and things that have been embedded within the society, this is what we fall into. Then we have to go into what we call a technological revolution, because there's another sector that a lot of people don't look into, and that's called a technocrat. Technocrat has to do with people that are in high sectors of technological advancement that are able to make political and economic moves and control governments and control the outcome of how people are caught into consumerism and how people are deployed and utilized and kept in this bond to where we're constantly what we call keeping up with the Joneses, or we constantly needing this the 2.0, 3.0, and so on and so forth, to where we're stuck in consumerism. So from a positive side, when we talk about a technological revolution, we can look at somebody like Moses West, who was a black engineer that developed atmospheric water generators to support the need of fresh water for Africans in places where water is not been readily available. So as revolutionaries that study political and social social politics and social maneuvers, we have to see how we must be technologically advanced, and we have to promote that to our people. On our last section, on part one of correct handling of revolution, Brother E talked about inspiring the people to realize that it's not all about doom and gloom, but we have to give some type of positive examples. And he talked about the building of the pyramids. We got modern day examples now of high level thinking and high level powerful things that can be promoted in terms of technological advancements that Africans have made. But these things are suppressed. These concepts are suppressed, and we're fed thing that the African is not smart. And so when we continually think this way, that becomes our perception. And if our perception is caught like that, that is why we can get stuck on the page of thinking that it's a cool and a good thing to do and a progressive thing to do to just protest, right? But at the same time, on the flip side, regarding the modern combat aspect of revolution, a technological revolution, we have to look at things like Space Force. Space Force was slipped into the military industrial complex through the Trump administration. A lot of people don't take that for what it is. And we got to realize that a whole new branch of military apparatus was created right here in the United States called the Space Force. The Space Force recently developed what they call classified military satellite communication projects, which is why we did hear in the mass media about the Russians putting out that nuclear satellite in orbit. Well, why was that promoted and pushed in the United States? Because the same things were going on within the United States as classified projects, but they didn't want you to know that. So they want to promote what the Russians are doing in order to advance the people to get behind the funding of the United States government, which we got to keep in mind. The United States spends more in military funding than I think what the next five world powers or next five powerful countries combined, or even more than that. So when we talk about Space Force and we talk about what's going on from that standpoint of a technological revolution, realize that these things again are setting us up for not being able to fight the fight the proper way, because we're not looking in all the directions and realizing how we're being attacked. And again, if you don't know how you're being attacked, then you will not be able to plan and develop something to be able to launch a proper attack. Another example I would say in that same aspect is somebody that people don't look at as a revolutionary, again, because we have to identify revolutionary models and types. Elon Musk is a revolutionary. Why do I say that? Because Elon Musk has produced revolutionary things. Currently today, he's producing through the Tesla Corporation, transparent glass which is the Tesla walls that are going to replace windows, which thereby will be able to generate enough solar power to fuel houses, to fuel cars, and to do other kind of projects that are being right now still to this day classified, as well as look at what's going on with the Neuralink. The first human trials are taking place with that. SpaceX has been able to launch thousands of satellites into space. You got a Tesla bot that's being developed, which is going to tie right back into the universal basic income that I was talking about, right? And then another thing that people are definitely not looking into is the Pi phone that's about to come out, which is going to be utilizing the SpaceX programs and the satellite communication programs that he's putting out into space. And then the one that definitely is not on the radar is the Boring Company that he has. So we talking about a person that is revolutionizing space, the air, the land, the sea, and then beneath that, we're talking about ground. The Boring Company, which is about him revolutionizing boring machines, and currently he has one called the project called Proof Rock version 3, which is able to operate completely remotely and autonomously via computerized systems and requires zero effort from actual people being underground. So this is a completely robotic underground tunnel boring system that's able to bore 7 miles a day and is in current operation now. So we don't even realize what's going on. So there are literally underground cities, bunkers, in anything you can think of from that standpoint, infrastructures that are being developed to this day right now that most of us are just not even being aware of and looking in the wrong direction to realize this is taking place. So we can't just simply focus on political and social revolutions, and we can't only identify with the revolutionaries that we like and that we want to pattern ourselves off of, but we have to see that there is economic and technological revolutions going on, and that these people are also playing a part in the social and political revolutions that are taking place. And when we don't combine and see all 4 elements of revolution and revolutionaries and learn how to defend and attack and orchestrate against these, then we're not looking at the full picture. And when we don't look at the full picture, we set ourselves up for failure.
Okay, I'm gonna go over these points. I'm not gonna say I did a updated correct handling of revolution, because it's not really that. It's kind of like the points I think that people should take to build the vanguard structure that Huey constantly talks about, that should teach the people, that should be in the process of teaching the people, and kind of like some of the points that I think will be good for going through that process, or at least understanding it. So I'm gonna break down a few points I'm gonna go over or allow us to go over. The first point And this is simple. All of this is simple. This is nothing highly dynamic. It's very simple. It's just not easy. It's simple, but not easy. And a lot of times people think those two words mean the same thing. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. So the first point is to unite with like minds. This is something that I know that Eve could get behind because it's something that he's always preaching. That you gotta, what you always call it, round the wagons. What do you call it, Eve? Round the wagons, bring out and just simply get with those who are thinking on the same level. At this stage, you will have a very, very small group. You're not going to have a big international organization. You're going to have a very, very small group. For second point, build an organization based on that unity. So the first point is unite with like minds. The second point is to build the organization based on that unity. Again, it's kind of like what you talk about, E. You talk about the whole, your organization structure should be the family, the people that you trust the most, the people that you are building with. That's what it's meant when it says build an organization. First, you unite with like minds. Brother Sight, Brother E, Brother War kind of want the same things, build on the same level of materials, willing to put in the same level of work. Okay, we have like minds. Now let's build an organization structured around Brother Sight, Brother E, and Brother War. That's the concept. Y'all got anything to say on that?
Yeah, there's no African revolutionary organization that I'm aware of that ever existed that wasn't successful to the same degree to which they were able to tap into certain fundamental principles that have made themselves evident throughout our history. One of those is, well, and I guess that depends on successful, how you define it and whatnot, because, you know, NAACP has done a hell of a job of integrating. But those of us who are working toward a truer African expression of our humanity, which is essentially to me what freedom would be for us, we have to buy in, understand, be aware of, take part in that the cultural necessity of family. There hasn't been, you know, we build whatever organization we build historically, resistance and all of those things. It always came from the masses of people. It always came from an extended family. That's just something that we carry with us and have carried with us. And that's why the whole concept of the individual is so dangerous for us, because it's completely antithetical to who it is we are. So, you know, the idea that we're going to mimic white folks and their strategies and their ways by putting together a big army and then sending that army out, or pulling in a big army, when the reality of it is the army has to come from within us. It has to be our brothers and our cousins and our aunties and, you know, grandmothers and whatever. It has to grow along that same type of hierarchy that has maintained our families for so long, because just that act is a revolutionary act. I mean, if everything we deal with is in some way damaging the Black family, then to rebuild that family and extend that family is the revolution to that. It is the change. And so it doesn't bode well for us. It doesn't work for us to go and punch a clock and all of those things we've talked about before, that it's still, you know, and you can kind of gauge, when we got here, we still had some family structure involved, some type of extended family. Even though they separated us and put us with different folks, the reality of it is, like Chancellor Williams has said, religion or spiritual systems across the continent are essentially the same. They're just different in the way that they express, the way you see them. Same as with family structure, same as with community structure, because it flowed from us. And without tapping into that, you know, during so-called slave times, we were able to, even though they separated us, to come back together on some level with one another, because we still identified with that and found that familyhood amongst each other. And then as all of that's broken down over, you know, the centuries of being over here, it's resulted in this fractured reality. And again, buying into the idea that we can do what white folks do and it's going to work for us, because it's not. And what white folks do, whatever it is, you talk about charities, they're making big money. You talk about going to fight wars, they're making big money. So everywhere you go, whatever they do, white folks, the structure, the shit that they like is geared around self-gain. And that's not going to work for us. Buying into that system, trying to make that system work for us, doesn't work. It's fundamentally flawed. It's about, you know, the glamorizing or the deification of the individual as opposed to our center and what we were about. So yeah, has to have that family thing. It can't be an element, can't be a piece. It's got to be the thing. You know, when we was kids back in the day, some of my best ideas came when we took a hiatus from the party. And it was just me and you hanging out at the house, having a cigar, chatting, yelling at the kids, taking the kids to the park, whatever we was doing. These ideas were always, even when we weren't talking or we weren't talking about the movement, the struggle, the people, specifically, we was just talking about that new album I hated, you love, whatever. It was always in the back burner. It was always being analyzed and brought into the conversation in some kind of way. So when we actively sat down and discussed those things, we already had this foundation. We kind of knew where each other was coming from. Those things got blended together and it came out. And that's what families do. It's like a family reunion. It's literally, for me, it's kind of what Ali and them thought they were doing, wanted to do with their heart, but didn't understand how to interject the intellect into it. Being a community liaison and being out in the community, having barbecues. You know, you see in the movies, Huey and them having cues in the neighborhood and whatnot. But it's that same type of energy. That's the energy we have to build off of. That I love you, you my family, what's up? Da 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 da. I was gonna say cuz, but somebody might get pissed off. But either way, whatever, you know, what's up, cuz, what up, blood? All of those things used to mean something completely different from what they mean now. And that's where we have to work toward getting, in order to get ourselves out of this shit. Punching the clock ain't gonna get it, not for us.
True indeed. Next person, you.
Well, let me
ahead,
add to that real quick.
Boy, my bad.
Well, one thing I want to say about that is what we have to look at is the duality of attacks that are deployed by the CIA. We often talk about counterintelligence all the time, but what we don't talk about, again, when I say duality, the other side of that, which is the counterconsciousness. The counterconsciousness program is what created recreational drugs, and that being promoted and spearheading the counterculture through the operation of creating these elements of counterculture and recreational drugs being pumped up. What you do is now you separate the individual ability to recognize liberation as an internal force and factor, which at that point allows us to create a higher level of perspective in addition to our perception of what we are in our reality. This is why a person that is liberated does not fear death, because they've seen the other side. They're able to connect themselves to the holistic apparatus of the universe and how we are supposed to be one with it. But when you allow recreational drugs to take place of higher spiritual practices, now we turn to things that are going to allow us to escape our what we call our day-to-day grind in order to be able to tolerate it. And so we build up what we call a tolerance for being able to be enslaved. And building up a tolerance for being able to be enslaved, it dilutes our ability to be able to deal with suffering and suffrage. So therefore, through counter-consciousness, it separates me from my higher self, which allows me to now sink into identity politics. And this is what takes us away from the collective embodiment of being a lifestyle, which kind of goes back to when E was talking about the commune style lifestyle. When we are all able to come together and see things together and even self-reflect, like how y'all was saying that some of the best thoughts came when you pulled yourself back from something. Why? Because at that point, now you're dealing with what we call inner reflection and inner self. When you do that, now you're able to tap into a higher level of consciousness. So the counter consciousness program and counter consciousness warfare has to do with stripping us of our ability to see self for what it is, our ability to be able to see and connect with a higher self. Therefore, all we're able to do at that point is indulge into things which takes us away from who we are and our true being, which is what you do to people when you want to strip them of their language, their way of life, their culture, and a connection to the land and to a true essence of what it means to be a people. And then you can, at that point, refeed them something that is basically a lower, that's not able to connect with the higher self, but connect with the lower self. And by doing that, now you have a shell of an individual, which is why religion is able to be pumped the way it is in terms of 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 the European religious systems and how the missionary is able to go in with the mercenary and tear up, neighborhoods, tear up countries, and tear up political systems. So that aspect goes into the counter consciousness, and that's what we are dealing with as a weapon that is actually being deployed greatly through social media right now. We talked in our last show about how we're constantly inundated with certain things that take away from who we are and what we are. And as a people, as long as we're stuck in that mind frame, we're not going to be able to shake and be exposed to enough revolutionary concepts or political ideology that can give us the right track to be able to think about an alternative to imperialism.
True indeed. And the next point actually, y'all actually kind of built on the next point already. But I guess because the first 2 points lead to the next point, the first three all go together. Number one is unite with like minds. Number two is build an organization based on that unity. And number three is make sure that every member is an asset and operate this organization as a community. Don't operate it necessarily. You have to structure it and everything that needs to be done for it to be organized, but don't operate it as a business. Operate it as a family, as E was just stressing that you have to have the family element there, and that's what's going to cause us. I mean, even E talked about when we was pulled away from the party and we had those times where we just built alone and with our children and things like that. But it's even deeper than that, because even while we was in the party, while we was when meetings would be over with and we would stand outside the headquarters and just talk, or any times when we were just going to see Brother Third, going to his house or Brother E's house or wherever we was at together, chopping it up, the process of political education was still in play. I remember it made me think about it because he brought up my music, something that I liked, he didn't like. I would be listening to 9 times out of 10 hardcore hip hop, gangster rap, reality rap, whatever words you want to call it. And E wasn't into that. And he brought a brother named Devin around who introduced us to a long list of alternative artists that I had never heard before, but was extremely conscious and revolutionary in their music. So that's how real political education actually starts taking place, from us just being around each other and in the vicinity of one another. Those ideas, those concepts, and even revolutionary practices in our listening desires change based on that family environment. So y'all have already said everything to say on number 3. Actually, go ahead, E.
Counterpoint. That part, unite with like minds, we do that already, which is part of the problem.
No,
sit around.
let me say this. I don't think we do. Because if you think about it, just really think about back, let's go back, 20 years into the new Black Panther Party. Now we all had an attraction to the Panther Party. We all had even an attraction to the militancy, but everybody there wasn't like-minded, because some of us there automatically felt like being in this revolutionary culture, reading and studying came with that. We believed that reading and studying was a part of that, but there was some there that didn't believe reading and studying was a part of that. There was some there that thought that the whole thing about being a Panther and to operate from a Panther's culture was just carrying weapons. Some really believed that. It was those that thought that that 80% of practicing Panther culture was throwing barbecues and kicking it in the neighborhood. So we really wasn't like-minded. We had a like attraction, but the minds wasn't alike. We wasn't really like-minded.
However, the cracks and fissures that existed when we got there and exacerbated manifest themselves in a way much more tangible after you left, i.e. the split. Though the split and the lines that it split and did all that with it were along the same lines that you just talked about. The cats that ain't want to read went that way. The cats that was okay with some study went that way. So even within the party, we had our cliques. That's just what it is. I say whatever you want. That's what it is. You had one person that was, about the barbecues, and that was their thing. Somebody else that comes in that's about barbecues is going to gravitate to that. Yeah. And because they're in this echo chamber of exchanging this idea about I ain't reading about dead people, they develop a kinship for one another and say, yeah, I ain't reading about books by dead people either. And it builds itself in the same way with the supposedly, the readable ones who wanted to read and whatnot. Same exact shit. So we still get caught up in that because our minds are still not paid attention to the way we do our bodies.
Let me jump on this real quick.
Let me say this right quick that I'm gonna pass to you, War, because because what I'm talking about in these points, I definitely don't think we did it in the past. See, he was saying that one of the things we did then was like minds. The whole reason I wrote this, because from my perspective, I don't think we was united with like minds. I think we was more united with like minds, and that's why we got so much more done when we was expelled. And then it was just us having to talk to each other. So now you're united with like minds. If War would have came with us, there would have been a unity of like minds. If I don't really know the brother Magnetic just from the time we didn't have the brother on the show, but if he would have came down and said, hey, I want to join with y'all, I think we would have had a unity of like minds. You know what I'm saying? Here you have those who understand the necessity for the physical training, the preparedness for battle and combat, the necessity of that, understanding that life is war and I must be ready for combat. But these same people, I also believe that equally, at least for me, I can speak for myself. For me, my ability to handle a gun is as equally important as my ability to break down revolutionary ideology. My ability to break down economics is as equally important as my ability to keep a man from killing me with a chokehold. To me, I don't think either one of those top each other. And I think to be able to do my job properly, I have to be able to have both of these. I have to be mind and body. I believe the gorilla is the perfect man. So to be the perfect man, I have to have mind and body. And what I believe is that we had, for the sake of growing the organization, we didn't necessarily have like minds. We had people that were like-minded enough. All right, we'll go with that. And what I'm saying here is no, like minds. We unite with like minds, with those who are moving in the same direction, those who have the same goals, and those who want the same results and is willing to put in the same. That's why I say in the beginning, the organization will be very small. It will be small. It may be 5 people, 3 people, but it'll be small. And then you develop along the lines of these other points. Go ahead, War. I know War wanted to say something, and E, you might want to come back on that.
Let me throw this out there because you kind of started off with it already. I think what we're talking about is the difference between attraction and appetite. Whereas if you come to the table, let's just call it, like, since y'all already went in the realm of a barbecue or something like that, or a cookout, everybody came to the table because of the attraction. But when I get to the cookout, my appetite is going to lean me toward water or a Coke, a hot dog, or something vegan or vegetarian, right? But we all at the same table. But depending on our appetite, which goes into our ability to be able to see self and to see this for what it is in terms of our diet structure, that's going to decide where we take it from there. And then I will also talk about another duality, which will be nostalgia and legacy. Some people came to the party for the nostalgia. Most people came to the party through the nostalgia, whereas others came to be a part of the legacy, which is building upon the foundation of what it means to be a Panther and a revolutionary. Nostalgia will attract you to the party, but only legacy will allow you to build on the party. Somebody can be there for 5, 6, 7, 8 years and never add to the legacy of what it means to be a Panther, but ride off of the nostalgianess or ride off of the attraction, but not develop a proper appetite to be a revolutionary and do revolutionary acts. So to me, that's the difference in what we're talking about. But everybody can come to the table through nostalgia and attraction, but not everybody has the right appetite and the right concept of what legacy means.
True indeed. Nice point. E.
Yeah, you dissect it and slice it all you want. If we could have convinced war this shit fucking 25 years ago, we might have got some shit done.
All right, I'm gonna move to my fourth point. Now, so that I don't want the audience to get lost. First point is unite with like minds. Second point is build an organization based on that unity. Let that unity, that family, be the foundation of the organization. Third point is to make sure that every member is an asset and operate this organization as a community. And when I say asset, what I mean is this. This is what I mean when I say that, and this is a true belief of mine. I believe that every member of the organization should have some type of trade, whether that trade is horticulture and being able to farm, whether that trade is a technological trade like what war is into, whatever that trade is, every member of the organization should be able to bring something to the table that allow the members of the organization to be able to go back into bartering with one another. If we ain't bartering with nobody else in the world, if I need my onions, I need to be able to go to E to get my onions and bring E some value for the onions that I'm able to get from E instead of going to Walmart to get them. That's what I mean by make sure every member is an asset that belongs to the organization and that's a part of the organization. I didn't explain that when I said that a while ago. So 4 is then once these first 3 points are foundated, you move to 4, which is manifest Ujima and Ujama, basically saying that operate the principles of collective working responsibility and cooperative economics as the basic economic principles that the organization moves and thrives on. And this means that the organization actually operates as a co-op. Now, I know some of y'all may not like this. Some revolutionary thinkers might say, man, is this brother Fitz talking about being a black capitalist? I'm not talking about being a black capitalist. I'm not talking about being a black communist. I don't care what you decide to call it. You can call it being a black Martian if you need to, but I'm talking about utilizing techniques that work. If the organizational structure is created and developed, the people are operating and moving as a family, they're paying dues, they're building a war chest, then the organization should operate as a co-op. Maybe the organization might want to start a business together. Maybe that business can be a small, simple business. Maybe they want to sell on eBay and buy product together. And by putting their finances together, they're able to purchase product at a lower rate and then sell it for a profit, take all profit back into the organization, and then continue this wheel going and utilize the resources that the organization is able to build, kind of like what E always talk about with the organization of Black Unity out in San Antonio. Small amount of members, but being that they was moving in the same trajectory, they was able to pool their resources and they was able to build something sustainable. This is essentially what I'm talking about. This is essentially that. But like I say, operate as a co-op, do business with each other, trade with each other, build an effective war chest together, etc. That's what I mean by making Ujima and Ujama as the basic foundational economic principle of the organization. Any of you brothers got anything to say, build on, detract from that?
Yeah, I would say that goes into being able to weigh in on our assets. This is one of the reasons why I saw the need to change the economic mechanism within our mechanism structure to being the resource mechanism. Because when you say economic mechanism, a lot of things, again, going into the attraction that a lot of people, that brings a lot of people to the Black Panther Party. Unfortunately, one of those attractions tend to be we all suffering from economic disparities. But with that being said, because of our inability to see the difference between economics and resources, I said, you know what? Let me pull away from that because that's something that is repelling people's interest in what we need to learn, going back to what you're saying, Sight, so that we can put ourselves in a better position. So I'm going to change it now to the resource mechanism. By doing that, it gets the people to start seeing that we have to have cooperative economics and cooperative building and develop means of production with one another, as opposed to always talking about getting money and what I'm gonna do with currency. We need to talk about what the currency or the money buys and produces, because it's not the money that we actually want, but it's the things that money can get. Because again, going back to what I said about the revolutionary concept of the Rothschilds, because of the banking system, because of the credit system, most people view being well off, they tie that into a currency, they tie that into a money, as opposed to what you can produce, or having assets in terms of things that you own and have control of, which requires at that point or not requires, but creates an output of being able to have an exchange of money, which is how you go, the difference between somebody that may be a millionaire and a billionaire is because they have control of these assets. Whereas a millionaire may be able to turn profit or turn things around. A billionaire is the one that actually controls the resources. And by controlling the resources, they control the supply and the demand. They control everything in between. And so it is a entirely different method of thinking to go from one to the other. And the masses of our people are simply caught up in the actual concept of what money is and what money can buy, as opposed to what I can produce and my tie back to land and production. So I think that when we talk about defining an asset or defining assets, we have to step back and see where the people's mentality are and the average person think. We are, as a people, we are financially and economically and resource deprived and ignorant and stupid, really, in that sense. And so we have to teach ourselves what it really means to be resource rich and resource valuable. It's no different what we see in the continent of Africa, to where what I call the topsoil mentality, to where we're simply concerned with what we can grow or deal with as a topsoil, but it is the natural resources and the minerals below that continue to get extracted and pulled from us that are worth way more than the topsoil. And so, as a people, when we continue to operate through what is referred to as a topsoil mentality, that means we're not going to be able to see below the surface of what's really going on, which again ties right back into what I meant when I talked about counter consciousness as an aspect of what is stripping us of true liberation, which is also attacking the collective embodiment that we should have toward one another.
And I agree with you 100%, except for what I agree with you 99.9%. One point I don't agree with. And I do understand why you changed it from economic to resource, because of the way people understand language, but we need to force the people to have a proper understanding of words, a proper understanding of definitions, because economics does not mean money. A lot of times our people with a false understanding of what these words mean, they think politics mean vote. They think economics mean money, and that's not what these things mean. Economic, the truest, proper, all the way back to the Greek word economos. The word economics means the proper management of a household. That's what the word means. In one economic book I read, I think they said the most basic definition you can give for economics is who gets what, when, where, and in what order. And if you think about it, when you're just a recipient of economics, then you're probably getting it last and you're getting what's left over. But when you're a creator of economics, then you're getting what you build. And a proper economist understands when we learn how to, and I believe it's very important. That's why I said that a revolutionary must be an economist. We have to teach our people economic principles and how currency flows, how current flow. We have to create that. We have to teach that and educate that, because once we start that and we start actually stop being recipients, then a true economist are the builders, the growers, and the producers of the things they need. Instead of worrying about who's going to give us what we need, when they're going to give it to us, we'll build it, we'll grow it, we'll produce it, we'll pull it out of the ground, and then we're taking care of our own economics. But the people, again, people think when they hear economics, they think money. They think economics means money, and economics does not mean money. Money is just one of the tools in the economist's toolbox. Money is just a tool that's utilized in economics, and it hasn't always been used in economics. It hasn't always been used, and what we're calling money now hasn't always been money. At one time, salt was money. They used salt as an exchange, and in that time frame, if we was able to whatever that movie called, Back to the Future, go back in time with what we call in money right now and try to give it to the people that use salt, they laugh at us.
Yeah.
We try to go back and try to get it what we call money now to the people that use shells, they would laugh at us. You understand what I'm saying?
Money is a form of currency. That's why I emphasize the concept of currency. Yep.
True indeed. True indeed. But next point, unless somebody has something they want to say. Okay, fifth point. That is one of the things that, you know, I got this great dream that this is what all organizations should be working toward if they really trying to serve the community and build with the people. Once this organization has structured this co-op, as I just talked about, and the organization itself is a co-op, the ultimate goal and the ultimate duty of the organization should be to build a community resource center in their community. In the community that they're serving should be a community center. Now, what should be in this community center? The basic stuff that's in recreational centers, but I think the most important things would be, and I would say this, just like I expect E to say, it should be a garden, you know, at the community center, and the people should be learning how to grow their own food. And I agree 100% with that. But also in the community, because the community center should have a garden, and the people should be trained in that, and should be able to, just like you see old men, I don't know if you see that in California, War, but I know y'all done seen this before. You'll see old men on the side of the road with a pickup with a whole bunch of watermelons. And you could have the youth in the community selling those watermelons. But anyway, back to the point. But I think that one of the major things that should be in this community center is a gym, the workout equipment, the training mats, the sparring gloves, things of that nature. And then as George Jackson said in Blood in My Eye, then we're able to then have somewhere for the kids to go. Have somewhere for even the parents to drop their kids off because they want a cheap or a free babysitter. And that's when you get access to the fertile minds of the youth, and the babies are the greatest. You retrain back the concept of offense as defense back into our people, because our people don't have that. Our people got defense, period. Even the Black Panther Party will call the Black Panther Party for self-defense. You know, so we need to get that offense as defense mentality back into our people. And I think that's one of the ways that you get it, kind of riding off what E said last week. We actually underground first instead of above ground. We're actually the good guys donating money, creating community centers, creating karate tournaments for the kids in the neighborhood to keep them out of gangs and fighting each other. But in reality, we're training the next breed of straight Black warriors and soldiers. But so that's what I think the fifth principle should be, that should be applied to any organization that said that they're serious about making changes in the community. Anybody want to Panther back off that?
You gotta have a classroom before you have a garden, man.
All of that. I believe in all that. All that should be there in the community, in the people's community center. No doubt. Six, recreate this system in as many areas of the country as possible. Recreate that same system I just said, and that's where your chapters start springing up. That's when you start becoming a national organization. There's no point in it being a national organization if the organization is not able to bring real resources to the communities in which they operate in. So recreate the same process in as many parts of the country as possible. And I know that there are people watching right now saying, man, they're going to ride down on y'all. You start doing some stuff like that, which leads to number 7. Be prepared for the inevitable attack that's coming from the warden. Be prepared for it. Don't act surprised. Don't think that you was doing this because you thought you were going to become the next Rockefeller. Don't think none of that. Because then, according to Huey, if Huey is right, he said at some point, they're going to look at you and say, wait a fucking minute. Wait a minute. Oh, I see what you're doing. And then they're going to come at you. And you should already have a strategy for being able to. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
I would say, to add to that, you have to already have a strategy, a method of conduction, and a tactical operation to handle it. This also goes in what you're speaking on is what we call the continuity core. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, again, this is something that was added to the original mechanism structure you put in place with the continuity core. Because when we talk about and we look at the failures, I would even say this, going back to how y'all talk about when y'all pulled away, from the organization. There was a
No,
period of time.
don't be trying that bullshit.
No, let me say what I gotta
Pull
say.
away my ass.
Okay, either way, however you left, okay.
When we was
Pushed away, pushed
when
away.
we were suspended
Okay.
from the organization for that time
All right.
being.
The point I'm getting at is there was a period of time to where I was not in good favor with the N.B.P.P. And so therefore, when I was in my little closet, what I ended up doing is looking at things from the standpoint of what is it about this structure that is making it weak. And what I realized is all that we had developed was what we called our field corps. And the field corps is basically from that standpoint, we also call them the tentacles operation, which is basically the defense, which used to be called the economic mechanism, community mechanism, and information mechanism. The problem with that is with those being the only things that define what a Panther is, this means that all we concerned with is getting out before the people and showing ourselves to be busy and doing work. But what are we doing to protect the structure and grow the structure to be more than what it currently is in terms of its operation? So the continuity core came into place in order for us to be able to see that things need to be taken to a higher level. And when we develop the continuity core, it's basically saying that we're going to protect the ability for the Panther to be able to be in existence in the future, which means that that foundation has to be able to be solid and that foundation has to grow. Because what we keep finding ourselves doing is restarting the same cycle, which means we never build anything. And going back to, I think it was mentioned before, if you building on sand, then you're not building on a good or solid foundation. But we have to be also be able to attack things from above and below. So going into natural concepts of spirituality, we have to be able to deal with continuity. All governments of power or power structures or life forms in general has the ability to replicate and regenerate itself. So continuity has to be a natural process. So that continuity element had to come into place. And then we had to create what we call the life cores, which was the identity mechanism, which goes directly into what E always talks about, the laboratory mechanism and the engineering mechanism. So these kind of things had to be added to the structures so that, at least in theory, there's an apparatus or a complete body of work that the Panthers can draw from and that the Black Panther can draw from and should operate from. So I just wanted to throw that out there in regards to that.
He is extremely quiet today.
You ain't pissed me off. So
Oh,
far,
let me
so
try
far
that.
you're
Then.
right.
I'll work on trying with the next one.
Well, that's it. We done. Them are the principles. We did our Huey principles and we did the 7 principles that I developed. So we're done. We actually touched all our points. Without E talking, I guess we got it done 30 minutes faster than usual.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, you got to come with something. E. I would also like to add, since we're kind of sort of done, one of the things I've noticed, especially here recently, is that a lot of the stuff been lost in translation as it has to do with inundating the people with the knowledge. We talked about that before, and I want to go back to what the third development did with the Little Red Book and use that as an example. If we can remember, the Little Red Book was sold by the third development, and the Little Red Book had a whole lot of quotations of revolutionary concepts that the people used to get inundated with. And why I think that's important is because maybe a lot of us don't realize, but the Little Red Book sold and was distributed over 5 billion copies. And it led to China being a world power it is now. And with that being said, when the Black Panther Party was promoting the Little Red Book, it was again inundating the community with these type of sayings. One of the quotations in the Red Book is, "No political party can possibly lead a great revolutionary movement to victory unless it possesses revolutionary theory and knowledge of history and has a profound grasp of practical movement." There's a lot of little powerful sayings in the Red Book like that. And what we are pulled away from is knowing that we have to inundate the people with a form of revolutionary science, a form of revolutionary talk that is going to outdo and outweigh the nonsense that is flooding social media now. And I would think that it was a little bit easier back then than it is now from that standpoint, because you did not have the type of communications that can transpire time and space like we deal with now, to where I can reach out and be across another country in a split second, and I can touch somebody through social media across the world. The problem with that is, by being able to reach out and talk to somebody that is thousands of miles away, it makes me neglect my next door neighbor. And by neglecting my next door neighbor, I'm stripping us of the power that we would have as a collective local body, which goes back to what Psych is saying about being able to, first and foremost, implement some level of localized power within the Panther structure, and then cookie cut that elsewhere. Because we are able to all right now spread ourselves so thin, we do spread ourselves so thin. And now, instead of concentrating in our own backyard in terms of developing any means of power, we reach out and jump on social media, and we try to look for, going to what I think we were saying earlier, like minds. It is so much easier now to reach out over social media and find somebody that thinks like me, to where it prevents me from being able to concentrate some form of power base within my own backyard, so that I can be more effective and actually implement something, or some semblance of a community, or intact community. And I think that's one of the weapons that are being used against us. So I just brought up the concept and what happened with the Little Red Book, because I think a lot of the science is out there. We keep referring back to books all day long, that where the information is out there, but why is it that the people are not getting exposed to this stuff? And what can we do to change that dynamic?
See, there you go with that bullshit again.
All right, there we go. Come with it, E. Come with it.
Whatever. No. It what can be done to take control of the economics, what economics actually are, and build around that. You know, economics, there's an economics of mind. You know, you say get with people of like mind. Okay, if we're talking about folks that are revolutionary minded, really revolutionary minded, that's going to take how long it took for us to find and connect with one another. So because there are so few of us, that circle just got that much smaller. So just from the sheer size, something as small as that, yelling and screaming, is not going to get the attention of anybody that's in a room full of people yelling and screaming. You're not. So this attempt still to go out and get people to do, for me, is still the wrong direction. You know, we talked about it back in the day. People don't want to join something that's being put together. They want to, they'll at least listen to the idea of joining something that's already established. So to already, you know, find, because you're not, you fuck up when you say like-minded. Again, we're like-minded, but we in 3 different time zones. So imagine trying to replicate this in Lakeland, Florida, or even Dallas or San Diego. This is likely not going to happen. If it does, okay, you got 3. Now you can either continue to try to get people to do X, Y, Z, or just simply do it.
And I'm not saying anything about trying to get people to do it. I'm saying that you
know who
build
I'm talking to.
with who you have. This is a personal one between you and War.
No,
Yeah.
you know too. You know that's always been our one part of the schism is recruiting versus doing shit.
Yeah, I don't really care much about the recruit. Yes, we would love to have a big, gigantic, magnanimous organization. I mean, that would be great, but that's not realistic. then you're not going to find the mass majority. Matter of fact, if the masses are doing it, it's probably wrong. That's how you know what's wrong. Whatever the majority of people is on, that's what's wrong. That's what you should go the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
Whatever people are avoiding, that's what we might need to check out. And whatever everybody else is doing, that's what we need to run from. So you're probably not going to get the masses unless you decide to become deaf, dumb, and blind. It's the only way you're going to be connected with the masses.
And that's pretty much my life. Y'all call me the contrarian. Yeah, anything somebody puts out, I'm going to really, really consider going the other direction just because somebody else put it out there. And that's not, I'm not saying people got to do that just to be argumentative and all of that. But like you said, the masses of the people are so fucked up that whatever moved the masses probably ain't no good. Unless you're giving away, I don't know, autobiography of Malcolm X with each chicken leg purchase or some shit. We're not going to really just dive in and want to be a part of it. Or whatever bullshit is, Popeye's chicken sandwich. You can't even get pissed because of the stereotype, because motherfuckers was killing each other over that shit. So fuck off with that shit. Yeah, I mean, and that's why I say having that small, I don't even want, be truthfully, I wouldn't even want an organization as big as Save the Nation. Because the reality of it is that's part of the problem. Because with that size comes power. And that power, y'all know, will corrupt or reveal the corruption of anybody that's involved with it. That's a part of the problem, is this elixir of being national and having all of these and being Malcolm and standing on the street corner and going like that, and, some nonsense and shit. So being that big is just in and of itself problematic, especially for us in the, broken down mind states that we're in. So me personally, I like small groups, connected, networked, aware of. Yeah, absolutely. But a big organization, nah, I wouldn't want it. It's just too much temptation. Even the best of us aren't always strong enough to resist certain things. And that's just the reality of it. We're men, we're women. That's how it is. So, but yeah, don't try that shit anymore, War.
I would say this: what we're talking about is a natural concept of which really goes into physics anyway, because the larger the body, the more diluted the message is going to be. That's what you're getting at. Whereas if you have a concentrated element of power, then it's going to be more powerful. The difference between a flashlight and a laser beam, basic physics that we're talking about. But keep in mind, y'all, is that this kind of goes into that area to where, and I even deal with this here in San Diego, telling people that at some point in time, first and foremost, when we're first starting out, we're supposed to be working on building our leadership pool, our leadership body, in creating a solid foundation where we continue to conserve the people. Next, we're supposed to be able to bring in and touch people that go back to what we hear in the third development, where they talk about the lumpy proletarian, to where we're able to bring in people that actually need help, that need to improve their minds, need to improve the way they view life. And they come to the Black Panther Party because they're seeking to be a better person. They're seeking to do better. The problem we keep running into is that we have a greater influx of people that need the party than than people that can serve the party. And that's where the problem comes in. How do you distinguish between somebody, again, that has the attraction to the Black Panther Party or the appetite of the Black Panther Party, right? So these are the kind of dynamics that we struggle with when we engage the people, as to whether or not we should turn away or whether or not we should support those that only have the attraction as opposed to those who have the right appetite. And even when you look at that outside of the Black Panther Party structure, it's the same thing in dealing with the community, because we have to be able to filter the difference between folks that have the right appetite and folks that are just simply attracted to it. Folks that understand the nostalgia, or simply going for the nostalgia, or someone that wants to impart themselves on the legacy of something, or the continuation or the continuity of it. And so that level of consciousness is what continues to get in the way of being able to form a solid structure. Now, I would think this would be a good segue into what Psych, if you wanted to go into a question that somebody actually asked us in
Yeah,
the chat.
That's what I was going to go into before we closed out. But since you brought it up, since you brought it up, I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna deal with a comment that was left to us in and it wasn't a negative comment, but it was a critique, so to speak. So we're gonna go into it and we're gonna dissect it. The person didn't really leave a name. It's username 23156. But this is what the person said. They said, and y'all can read it on the screen. It says, I don't ever think it's a good idea to discuss revolutionary business on YouTube or social media. The pigs and the government got binders with Panther members' names, addresses, and rap sheets, just like games. Here's an example. You got the police who were posing themselves as Panthers to collect intelligence, just like in the OMG 1% motorcycle game. Real Panthers need loyalty. Stay true to the original 10-point and revolutionary activities to be down for real Black power. Do you see the KKK, Nazis, Aryan Brotherhood, or Mafia having YouTube conferences? The Panther organization need to be structured like a secret society, and revolutionary Panther business shouldn't be discussed online to the public. Just like Panthers, Bloods, and Crips who infiltrate law enforcement to have some law enforcement pro-Black power. I don't understand the statement. Watch City of Lies and Bastards of the Party. Both of those, one is a movie, and Bastards of the Party, is that a documentary war?
Yeah, basically talking about the Bloods and Crips forming out of the Black Panther Party.
Okay, all right. So what do you brothers got to say to the brother or sister, whoever it was that left that comment?
When did we have a conference on here?
Yeah,
tell me.
That's what I want to get into, because to me, it says we should not be discussing revolutionary business. I don't think we're discussing revolutionary business. We're discussing revolutionary ideology. And ideology is something that's out there for the people. Yeah. I don't think we've gotten on here and talked our business of Panther work, our business of operation. So you know, I really don't know what to say other than that. Is we have to, you know, that goes back to me when we talk about define, develop, and defend. We first have to have things in the right perspective in terms of our definitions, and that will decide our takes on things. So maybe we're dealing with somebody who doesn't know the difference between ideology and business.
True, and it makes me think about something else. When we was in San Diego, as you know, we had a impromptu meeting at one of your members' houses because of one of the brothers that y'all do the community programs with had been arrested. And so everything kind of, you know, everything that happened. I ain't got to get into the details, but ideally we was planning to actually record that session as a YouTube video. However, because of the incident that took place before we had that little meeting, the things that were discussed in that meeting, we decided that it wouldn't be appropriate to put on YouTube. Matter of fact, War gave me a call and said that we need to go over the whole thing before we drop anything, because a lot of inner personal party business was discussed during that conversation. And we just decided, well, we're just gonna archive that and not drop that at all. So that's an example of not putting out personal party business. And as Brother Ward just said, what we discuss on this channel with these videos is revolutionary ideology. And it's the same thing that Che Guevara discussed in his books. It's the same thing that Stokely Carmichael discussed, that Huey P Newton discussed, that Frantz Fanon discussed. All of them discuss revolutionary ideology. So if we're incorrect for doing this, then they would have to also be incorrect for the things that they done in the books that they wrote.
I think that's cut and dry.
Another thing that I want to say, he said a lot of things that kind of, and this ain't saying that Huey is 100% correct, but the truth is, he said a lot of things that goes directly against a lot of what Huey said. He said the Panther organization should be structured as a secret society. Huey said that you can't operate as a secret society. He said it's a contradiction. I read it a while ago, so I'm not going to read it again. Fred Hampton even said it. He joked about it. He said, if you're going to be underground, who you going to be organizing? Groundhogs? He said, how you going to be underground and then organizing the people? So you can't really operate as a secret society. And I've never liked this. He compared the party to the KKK, the Nazis, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the Mafia. And I don't think the party can be compared to any of those things. You know, I've always hated that. You know, when I was on vacation, as E like to call it, brothers would always make that comparison. And I'd always say, ain't the Panther Party like a black KKK? They would say that. And I'd be like, well, give me one of the examples when the Black Panther Party burnt a cross outside of a white church. Give me one of the examples when the Black Panther Party drug a white man behind a truck or a horse. Give me one of the examples when the Black Panther Party went out on a happy lynching parade and was lynching white people. Give me examples of those, and then you could say the Black Panther Party is the black version of the KKK. But if you can't give me any of those examples, then what are we talking about? I don't see the Black Panther Party doing any activity that could be likened to the KKK, the Nazis, the Aryan Brotherhood, or the Italian Mafia. To me, that comparison, again, we have to. It shows that there's a lot of political education, political culture education that really needs to take place. There's a lot of defining, developing, and defending that needs to take place, in my opinion.
And I would even say that this person probably is not able to distinguish the difference between the ideology of the KKK, the ideology of the neo-Nazis, and the business of them, because they definitely promote their ideology all over the internet. They do the same thing we're doing. They do the same thing. And maybe this person just analytics are just not hitting on those, but you can find propaganda and ideology of the KKK all over the internet. In fact, I would even go as far as to say a lot of the propaganda is embedded within the system that creates the inferiority that we suffer from. So part of the thing that we want to do is help the people to be able to identify the weapons that are being used against them by the organizations, the KKK, the different neo Nazis, the Aryan Brotherhood, and all the different derivatives of those white supremacist type of movements. So I mean, it has to be called out for what it is. And so that needs to be done. You don't allow the people to remain asleep indefinitely for no damn reason whatsoever, other than the fact that I'm afraid of of letting people know that I know a little something. And I think that's kind of why they probably even went into the whole aspect of the secret society. And
Yeah.
I would say that the nature of what it means to be a Black Panther is not that. There are other elements that exist within the community that may fit that model that he's talking about, but that is not what the Black Panther Party is supposed to be. So you can't force us to be something that we're not supposed to be. So I would urge that person to go out there and to create that if that's what they think is the methodology that should be used. But that there's going to come a point in time to where that quote unquote structure that he's talking about is not going to match up to what needs to be done with this element, because that's you can't put the two in the same room together. It's not meant to be that way. So a lot of times what we're talking about now is when you're dealing with somebody that is attempting to impose their point of views or impose what they want to work on the Black Panther Party. And that's what we're talking about. We can't please everybody's views and accept everybody's views and everybody's methodologies or frameworks into our structure. We have a 10-point platform. We have a way of operating. Your framework does not match this. So therefore, the framework that you are attempting to say that we should be can't be, and needs to be what you want to call it, and go in that direction. But that's not what the Black Panther Party is, nor should it be. That's to me, that's politics 101. Business, ideology, not the same thing.
I
All
would
right,
concur.
brothers.
That's not an awesome comment left on there.
He said that's not an awesome comment.
Nah, I wasn't impressed. So they say that what is it? A loyal Panther follows the original platform and da 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 da. That's that's not at all our approach to it. But that's for me coming from a static mind, that probably believes that the 10-point platform popped up like they created the concept of a 10-point platform and put it together. not realizing that it came from, you know, Elijah and them, that it came from Garvey and them, that it came from, and on back and back and back. And that's a part of the, you know, the continuity. But being stuck in that, well, I could never do that. Didn't do that. Got in trouble for doing that.
Called crystallization.
And this is why the Black Panther Party says it's necessary for the people to transform this society and therefore free the world in order for the world to be a place where human people can exist.